I think I look a little bald. Do I look sort of bald? Okay, I'm going to get started here. Hi and welcome. It is Renee here, not quite old, not quite young, not quite old, regardless. Hope everyone is having an amazing week. I am here with part 2 of Am I having a midlife crisis? I think we determined the answer was yes. And because of that, it meant that I had the opportunity for an activation. I had the opportunity not to be the victim of my crisis, but to create the activations that I wanted to create. So, just to recap, last week I talked about how I really am working on shifting my mindset, shifting my story away from this idea of crisis, which is like very passive, to activation, which is like waking up. And while I was prepping this and kind of thinking about my thoughts on this, I made this list. And so when I think about crisis, I think about something passive that happens to me, as opposed to something active that I create, right? When I think about a crisis, I feel that I am in the victim role. But when I think about activations, then I'm the coach. And that's David Emerald talk. I love him, the empowerment dynamic. And so it's about shifting from being in the victim to being the coach. I think the word stale comes to mind when I think crisis. It's kind of half stale, half chaotic. But when I think about activations, I feel like I'm fresh and I'm like in the flow. And then the last words I wrote down were that when I'm in crisis, I feel untethered, kind of adrift. But when I'm in activation, I feel grounded and supported. So putting those words together was really interesting. But then I kind of thought, there's also similarities here. And I think it's important to notice that regardless of how I define this, there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of energy. And frankly, there's a lack of understanding, I think, starting from ourselves, that then kind of can permeate to the outside world around really what's going on with us. And so anyway, that's just an exercise I do, is put pen to paper and just kind of write pros or cons or this or that. And I find that it helps me to articulate what's on my mind. But so anyway, so I started with that because last week was a huge activation week for me. And I'm actually really proud of myself. And I'm going to celebrate this win because if you know me, you know that I do the Tracy Anderson method. And off and on for like 20 years, but really consistently for the last 5. And last weekend was Tracy Fest, and it was in LaBelle, Florida, outside of Fort Myers. And when Tracy announced this festival back in probably October, early November, I kind of perked up. I was like, I want to go. And then I got in my head and I got nervous and I didn't know anyone going. And, it's expensive. It's a pain to get there. Like, where's LaBelle? I had no idea. And at the end of the day, I decided to do it. And I bought the ticket and I connected with people who I'd never met before. And it ended up being just a really incredible weekend for a number of reasons. And the festival was fantastic. And I was exposed to a lot of cool new things and met new people. And then it was also very enriching. And then I got to spend some time with friends and family that I normally wouldn't have seen. So it was one of those activation points for me where I was doing something new. I was getting out of my comfort zone. And like we talked about last week too, with the yoga concept of stira and sukham, I was also grounded in my why and in things like friends and family. So that's a win. Now, part of what I feel like is important to kind of think about and ponder here is that this idea of awareness and the why has to be the first step. And, if I look at this example of going to Tracy Fest, for example, I was aware of the conflict in my own heart, kind of. Like, I was aware that I wanted to go and experience this. And I was aware of the roadblocks I was putting up for myself. Of course, challenges and time and money and all of that. But some of the emotional stuff that I was putting up was totally my own creation. So for me, as I shift this mindset around midlife, I want to start with this step of awareness and more specifically, noticing where you might be settling. And what I mean about that is notice when you might say things like, either out loud or to yourself, like, oh, it's fine. Or if something happens that really doesn't resonate with you, you're like, it's okay. And first of all, just noticing this, right? And not judging yourself, but noticing it. But then kind of say to yourself out loud, or maybe in your head, say, would I accept this level of like complacency from someone I loved? If someone I loved was saying, oh, it's okay, or oh, whatever, just is what it is, in regard to their life, I'd be irritated. I'd be frustrated. I'd want them to have more, to get more, to sell themselves bigger, right? So noticing and noodling on where you could be selling yourself short and where you could be settling, and recognizing that you're worth as much as the other people in your life that you wouldn't want to settle, have them settle for themselves. I think you see what I'm saying. But the thing is that just bringing this into awareness and noticing patterns where you can change is a really powerful first step. Because often when we get stuck in a rut, like can happen in midlife when we're used to our routines and our responsibilities, we might not even consciously know where we're like really getting stuck. So step one, awareness. And step two then is where we start the outward motion, right? And that's where we really need to have courage to trust ourselves and courage to take that first step. And when I think about courage, I think that it doesn't have to be super dramatic. I think of Hemingway, Ernest Hemingway. I'm a master's degree in English literature, and one of my favorite professors was a huge Hemingway buff. And so courage is grace under pressure. That's Hemingway's definition. And so when I think about that, it's like I first want to acknowledge all the pressures, all of the realities. It's like just taking stock of, what's hard, but then also noticing who benefits from you staying the same. Is it you? Then putting yourself back in the driver's seat. And that means staying grounded, living with integrity, knowing your why, but determining that you have the power to not change for show or not change for the sake of changing, but to change with integrity because you deserve it. You deserve to get unstuck. And that the person who benefits from the change has got to be you, even if that makes people around you a little uncomfortable. And that's hard. Somebody's at the door. That startled me. So next is we want to start where there's the least resistance, because why make it hard on yourself? Then it already is, right? We've determined it's hard. So habit research consistently shows, and I'm looking at my notes, that people fail not from the lack of motivation, but from the lack of taking on bite-sized goals, right? So they aim so big that they end up not doing really anything because they get overwhelmed. So look for the smallest action that feels doable, that feels easy. And this isn't laziness here, y'all. This is strategy. And so when you determine the course of action that seems doable, take that first step. For me, look at the Tracy Anderson example. Registering for Tracy Fest was the easy part. The harder part was all the other stuff around the physical and emotional aspects of me getting there, but I was able to do it because I took the first step, which felt like the easy one, which was buying the ticket. You. It's my dad, y'all.
Hello. Good to meet you.
All right, thanks, Dad. Give
See
me
you
a
later.
kiss.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
Drive safe tomorrow. Wow.
See you later.
Have fun. Banks did alert me this time.
Oh, I know. He came to the door.
Yeah. Gonna get a treat, good boy. There you go. Aw. All right, thank you, Dad. Love
See
you.
later. Love you.
Mwah. I'm glad you came in, though.
Oh, I didn't think you were here.
No, that's okay. You're always welcome. Bye. There's the power of live broadcasting. Anyway, so starting with the path of least resistance is a great place to start. So next we want to keep that momentum going. So, the idea that when we have a baby step, if we fall down, that's okay. We jump back up, right? And we're less worried about the stumble than falling completely off a cliff. So if we start to notice ourselves saying things like, I have to force myself to do it, or I have to push hard, I have to push through, those are little awareness pieces that might cause us to pause and redirect our actions, or redirect the way that we're taking these next steps, right? That we're making these activations. And so just, thinking action and forward mobility without feeling this force or pressure that then can get in our way. And then last but not least, the last step of this whole thing, something we don't do enough, is celebrate our own wins. We are so quick to move on and check things off lists that we don't often pause, take a break, and just say, hey, I've done a good job. I am proud of myself here. Take that, share it with your community, do all the things that are going to give you that I think it's dopamine, a dopamine boost. Brain people, help me out here. Dopamine, serotonin, one of those good happy hormones that will help us to continue on this positive path forward. So, awareness, courage, start with the least resistance, keep going with baby steps, and celebrate your wins. That's the path that I'm trying to live as I navigate this new space. And, so kind of to close out this, is there are two things that have really bubbled up for me. And the first one is that I just really want to say that reinvention is totally great, is totally allowed. And I don't mean that you have to blow up a perfectly good life for the sake of trying something different, but it doesn't mean we have to stay polite and small and in our lane. I mean, we're 50, right? We are midlife. We are able to reinvent ourselves. And so if there is a big move calling you, if it is in your heart, if it's grounded in your why, then take the big swing, right? Like, you are worth it. You are worth that risk. And, it's kind of like when we're taught to be grateful and stay in our lane and not rock the boat. Like, if not now, when? You don't know. What's that whole thing about your time is a bank account that you never know the balance? Why wait? And so as I'm thinking about today, how to sort of wrap this up, there are two things. One is take the big swing. And then the second one is just kind of to maybe challenge yourself to notice where you might be settling, where you might be saying, it's okay, it's fine, it is what it is. Taking stock of that, and maybe that will help you realize that those are the places where maybe you could take that first step. So anyhow, that is the day. That is creation and activation of shifting our mindset from crisis to activation. Thank you. Love you. And of course, subscribe, follow along, do all those things. But I'm not an expert. I am living this content. I'm building the plane while I fly it. So please let me know feedback, follow up, etc. Until next Wednesday. Bye.